Hi, I'm Tanya, and I recently went through a divorce. I want to share my story because I hope it can help someone going through a similar situation. Maybe my experience can offer some guidance or comfort. A little background about me: my parents split up when I was just 7 years old. My dad was a Navy SEAL, so he was away from home a lot. Eventually, my parents' relationship fell apart. My mom remarried a man named Paul, and I ended up living with them. Unfortunately, Paul was abusive to me. The worst part? My mom knew but loved Paul too much to do anything about it. She just pretended it wasn't happening. My dad would visit sometimes, and when he did, I would spend the weekend with him. But being young and scared, I never told him what was happening at home. My dad and I were always really close. He made me feel like I was the most important person in his life. One day when I was almost done with middle school, I went to the beach with my dad. I was wearing beach shorts, and he noticed some bruises on my legs. "Hey, what's that on your leg?" he asked. I tried to brush it off, saying I just got hurt, but he was concerned. He asked if I was hiding something. I finally told him the truth, that Paul was cruel to me and sometimes hit me. My dad was furious and promised that it would end right away. He took me to live with him and got full custody of me after legal proceedings. Life with my dad was much better. Because of his work, I sometimes stayed at my aunt's house nearby. My mom tried to apologize and reconnect, but eventually she cut me off. To be honest, I was never as close to her as I was to my dad. I went on to medical school, earned my degree, and became a licensed cardiologist. It was always my dream, and my dad and aunt were incredibly proud of me. They were the only family I had at that point. I'm not very outgoing, but I had a few close friends. As a doctor, I learned to be warm and approachable, and surprisingly, I became good at it. I met my husband Justin at a karaoke bar. Normally, I wouldn't have gone there, but it was my friend's birthday. Justin needed a partner for a duet, and since I thought he was cute, my friends pushed me to join him. We had a great time, exchanged numbers, and started dating. My dad liked him right away because Justin was kind and likable. He worked as a marketing assistant in the corporate world and gave me the love and care I had missed before my dad took me in. A year into our relationship, Justin took me back to the same karaoke bar where we first met and proposed to me. "I think it's time for us to start the family we've always talked about." "What do you mean, babe?" I asked. "Tanya, there's something I've been wanting to ask you for a while now," Justin replied. "What is it?" I asked, curious. Justin took a deep breath. "When we first met at that karaoke bar, I had no idea I was meeting the love of my life. You've brought so much happiness and warmth into my life, and I can't imagine spending it with anyone else. Will you marry me?" "Oh baby, yes," I said, feeling a rush of emotions. To be honest, while some people might find it perfectly okay to get married within a year, it felt a bit early for me, especially with the emotional walls I had built over time. I said yes in the moment, but afterward I had a lot of thoughts about it. I loved Justin deeply, but I was afraid that if I asked for more time, he might consider ending our relationship, so I decided to go along with it. We had a very private wedding ceremony. I invited my mother, but she didn't show up, which was disappointing because, after all, she was my mother. However, my dad was there, and I was immensely grateful for his presence. He walked me down the aisle, and I was officially married to Justin. A year into our marriage, we were blessed with a beautiful baby girl. I remember after my delivery, the room was filled with balloons and flowers as everyone came to visit: my dad, Justin, and his parents. As a new mother, I decided to take some time off work to be with my daughter. That early time with Amanda was incredible, and I still cherish every moment of her babyhood. There's truly nothing as beautiful as bringing a child into this world. It's a testament to the wonders of life. Justin was working during this time, but eventually I had to return to my job. Justin was amazing as a dad. He had a knack for being super playful and gentle with our daughter. I mean, the guy would even let her put makeup on his face. He was a real sweetheart as a dad. But here's the thing, with both of us going back to work, we decided to hire a nanny to look after Amanda. She was a little bundle of energy, and we wanted her to have the best care while we were away. After some time, I got pregnant again, and then, out of the blue, came the big surprise. The doctor told us we weren't just expecting one more addition to our family, we were having twins. It wasn't exactly what we had planned for. but it brought a huge amount of joy into our lives. Little did we know that with the arrival of our children, the dynamics of our marriage were about to change. Justin never openly said it, but I started to sense that he wasn't thrilled about the fact that I earned more than him. I really picked up on this when our friends Carrie and Dylan came over for dinner during my 3rd trimester. "So how are you guys feeling about the babies on the way?" Dylan asked. "Oh, we're excited." "A little nervous, but mostly excited," Justin answered. "Speaking of babies, have you guys thought about names yet?" Carrie asked. "Yes, we've been brainstorming. We want something unique, but not too out there, you know," I replied. "Any favorites so far?" Carrie continued. "We've tossed around a few ideas, but we haven't settled on anything yet," I said. "How about family names? Those can be really meaningful," Carrie suggested. "Absolutely. We've been shopping a lot lately, looking at strollers that can accommodate multiple babies. It's been overwhelming, but we'll figure it out," Justin added. "It's amazing how much stuff you need for 2 babies, right?" Dylan said. "Tell me about it. Our checklist keeps getting longer," Justin replied. "Tanya, do you miss being at work?" Carrie asked. "A bit," I admitted. "You know, being a doctor is tough, but when you treat people and help them, it just feels so good to see their smiles." "Wow, a corporate worker and a doctor. Do you even manage to find time to make all these babies?" Dylan joked. "Ah, come on," Justin laughed, but then Dylan added, "I'm pretty sure your wife must be the money bag in the house, huh?" "Well, you know how it is, Dylan," Justin replied with a forced smile. "I actually earn more than Tanya." "Ask Crew this, let's bring out the dessert," Justin said casually. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Why would he lie about something like that? After Dylan and Carrie left while we were doing the dishes, I decided to confront him. "Justin, can we talk for a moment?" I asked. "Sure, what's on your mind?" he replied. "You said you earn more than me, that's not true, is it?" "No, it's not true," Justin admitted, looking down. "Why on earth would you lie about something like that?" I asked, feeling confused. "I don't know, T. I guess I was just embarrassed. It felt awkward," he said quietly. "Embarrassed? I had no idea this was such a sensitive topic for you," I said, trying to understand. "I'm not sensitive, T. I'm a man, and I should be the one in charge," Justin snapped. "You've never complained about it before. What's got you so worked up now?" "I just don't want people to think I'm some kind of loser, okay? Justin, if it works for us, it works for us. Who cares what other people think?" "Yeah, whatever," he muttered. His response left me feeling uncomfortable. It came across as somewhat misogynistic. What was the problem if our arrangement worked for us? I never had an issue with having a husband who contributed less financially. After all, money isn't what keeps a family together. At that point, I had a lot on my plate, so I didn't dwell on it too much. 2 months later, the big day finally arrived. My pregnancy had been complicated, but eventually I gave birth to twin baby boys. I held my precious little boys, Abe and Leon, with both hands in the hospital bed. "Our family feels complete, baby. You've made me the happiest man alive. I love you," Justin said, beaming. "It wasn't all me, babe," I replied, smiling. "Amanda, look at your baby brothers. Aren't they so cute?" I asked, turning to our daughter. "Baby brothers?" Amanda asked with wide eyes. "Yes, sweetheart. Do you want to sit next to Mom?" I offered. "Yes," she said eagerly. "Say hello to your baby brothers, Amanda," I encouraged her. "Hi," Amanda said softly. At that moment, I felt an overwhelming sense of contentment with my life. I dreamed of being the best mom to all my kids, something I never got from my mother. My deepest desire was to provide them with everything they wished for and shield them from all the bad things in the world. Soon after, we took the babies home, and the nursery was all set up for them. Justin and I both took some time off work. When Justin eventually returned to the office, things got really tough at home. Juggling the care of the babies and Amanda was exhausting, and we were in a tight spot financially. Things weren't exactly rosy. I had a strong desire to give my family the best of everything, and I had the means to do so, but we also needed a parent at home to take care of the kids. It was a challenging situation, and we needed to find a way to make it work. The issue was the significant income gap between us. Justin brought in only $30,000 a year, while I earned $150,000 a year. You could see the difference. From my perspective, it made sense for me to continue working, I had a good career and a well-paying job with potential for salary growth. I thought I would talk things out with Justin, and he would understand my viewpoint, but things didn't go as planned. After dinner, Justin and I were in the twins' room, checking up on them. 3 kids. We always planned for 2, but I'm not complaining. They're so cute, Justin said. Yeah, they are. Well, I want to talk to you about something, I began. Sure, what's on your mind, he asked. We need to secure all our kids' futures, you know? I know I might be thinking too far ahead, but we can provide them with better opportunities. We can even help them with their college if they need it, I explained. You're right, Justin agreed. If I continue with my job, we can save more. And if I work for a few more years, I'll likely get a raise, I said, feeling hopeful. That would be amazing, but who will stay with the kids at home while we're working? Justin asked. What if you quit working and stay home to take care of the kids? I suggested. Are you kidding me? No way, you get along with them so well? Justin responded, looking shocked. What I mean is, I am the man of the house. Just because you have a higher paying job doesn't make you the decision maker, Justin said, his voice growing tense. Justin, are you kidding me? Can't you see we would have a better life if I went to work instead? Seriously, is your ego that fragile that taking care of the kids makes you think you're less of a man? I asked, my frustration boiling over. Justin looked furious, something I had never expected. He raised his hand and slapped me across the face. How dare you say that to me? You're trying to be the boss, aren't you? Just stay in your place, do what you're told, and listen to me. Justin shouted before leaving the room, leaving me in shock. I couldn't believe what had just happened. How could my husband, the father of my children, someone I thought loved me, do this? I was devastated, angry, and scared all at once. I didn't know what he might do next if I made another mistake. That night, I couldn't sleep. I spent the night on the couch, thinking about my options. I knew I had to leave this marriage, not just for me, but for the kids too. I remembered going through something similar when I was young, with my mom's husband Paul. My dad had taught me what a real man should be like after that experience. Suddenly, one of the twins started crying on the baby monitor, and it hit me. The baby monitor in the twins' room must have recorded everything that happened. I had proof. The first thing I did was save the footage, and then I started forming a plan. I waited until morning, making sure Justin and the kids were still asleep. Then I called my dad. Good morning, Bunny, my dad answered. Hey Dad, you're calling me so early today. Is everything all right? No, Dad, something happened last night. I need help, I said, trying to keep calm. What happened? Are you safe? My dad asked, his voice full of concern. For now, yes. But last night Justin and I argued and he slapped me, I explained. What? How dare he? Why did you wait all night to call me? He exclaimed. I didn't know what to do, Dad, I admitted. Sweetheart, remember what I've always said. I'm here for you whenever you need me. I mean it, he reassured me. Well, Dad, the thing is, all of this happened in the twins' room, and it was recorded on the baby monitor, I said. Bingo, we have proof. We're going to get him. I know some people in law enforcement. Honey, stay put. Where is Justin right now? He asked. He's still sleeping, I replied. Send me that video and get the kids ready. I'm coming, he instructed. I quickly woke up Amanda and gathered the twins, packing a bag for them. I forwarded the recording to my dad and waited anxiously in the living room. Just 15 minutes after the phone call, there was loud knocking on the door. As I approached, I heard Justin coming down the stairs. Who's at the door? Why are the babies here? What's going on? Justin asked, confused. Open the door. It's the police. A voice shouted. The police? Who called them? Justin rushed down the stairs as I opened the door. The first person to enter was my dad, who hugged me tightly. Thank God you're safe, honey. I'm so sorry this happened, he said. You're under arrest for assaulting your wife. Anything you say can and will be used against you in court. You have the right to an attorney. If you can't afford one will be provided for you. The police officer said as he handcuffed Justin. Is this about last night? You've got it all wrong. It was just a big misunderstanding, Justin protested. Get these cuffs off me. T, you're going to pay for this. I promise, Justin shouted angrily. My dad stepped in, his voice firm. I will break your jaw if you ever speak to my daughter like that again. Consider yourself lucky I didn't handle this myself. Take him, officer. After that, my dad drove me and the kids to his house. Both Justin and I hired lawyers, and there was a lot of courtroom drama. Surprisingly, Justin's criminal record included a bar fight where someone ended up hospitalized for a month. I had no idea about this. As a result, Justin was sentenced to 3 months in jail. I sent him the divorce papers and gained full custody of the children. Justin wasn't granted any visitation rights. I had a lot to figure out, but my dad offered a solution. You know, I'm retired. If you'd like, we can take care of the kids here until you figure things out. No pressure, he suggested. Dad, that would mean a lot to me while I sort everything out, I said, feeling relieved. By the way, I've met someone named Kathy. She brings me a lot of joy. Would you mind if she moved in here too? I already asked her before all this happened, but I was going to tell you, he added. Dad, I'm more than happy for you. I'm glad you found someone. You can return to work, and Kathy and I will look after the kids, I replied, smiling. 6 months have passed since we moved into my dad's house, and a lot has changed. Justin was released from jail, but hasn't tried to contact me. I've gone back to work and met Kathy, who is kind, wise, and affectionate. She even gives me motherly advice, filling a void I didn't know I had. All my kids are healthy, and Amanda has started preschool. I know I still need time to fully heal from everything, but I'm grateful for what I have. For now, I'm focusing on my work and my kids. It may take time, but surrounded by my family's love, I know I'll find my way.
It appears our working styles just aren't compatible. Starting tomorrow, there's no need for you to come in, I declared, feeling I had reached my breaking point. I couldn't continue working under such leadership any longer, so I made my decision on the spot. Understood. I'll tender my resignation effective immediately. Thank you for the opportunity, I replied calmly, though inside I lamented leaving the job I once cherished. As I adjusted to the hectic pace of my days, a new clerk approached me with news of a visitor. Curious, I made my way to the reception room, where I found Samantha waiting. John, please reconsider returning to our company, Samantha implored, surprising me with her humility. Gone was the stern, demanding figure I once knew. My name is John Baker, and I have been dedicated to our boutique couture shop in this small town for 20 years. Despite its couture label, our clientele for bespoke items has diminished, prompting us to expand our offerings to include suits, shirts, and even school uniforms to sustain our business. Despite the changing landscape, I've always cherished our shop for its strong community roots and values. However, the atmosphere shifted when our long-standing president fell ill. He was the visionary behind our establishment, but as his health declined, his granddaughter Samantha Smith, with no prior industry experience, assumed leadership. While the transition occurred smoothly, Samantha's approach to management left much to be desired. I found myself particularly singled out by her harsh scrutiny. Samantha, how are our sales faring recently? I urge you to secure new contracts promptly, she demanded, clearly irritable. I've been actively seeking opportunities, but it's challenging to attract clients interested in culture. The decline in demand is evident, and our traditional couture model is facing challenges, I explained, attempting to provide context. However, Samantha's response was unforgiving. I don't want excuses. It's not a matter of impossibility, it's a matter of effort. Until you bring in new contracts, merely servicing existing clients won't suffice. I expect you to expand our client base, she retorted with a heavy sigh, leaving little room for discussion. Don't assume you're here indefinitely. Spend more time networking outside. Don't return until you've clinched a contract, Samantha commanded, rising from her seat, her designer bag and impeccably tailored suit serving as symbols of her authority as the company's president. However, her penchant for spending work hours at spas and salons eroded the respect of her employees. Taking a break, Miss President? We have a 3:00 p.m. meeting regarding the uniforms, I interjected, only to be met with Samantha slamming her bag onto the desk with a resounding thud. A break? Let me make this clear, a president doesn't take breaks. It's frustrating to be lumped together with regular employees. Opportunities can arise unexpectedly, and it's crucial to maintain a visible presence. Think before you speak, she reprimanded sharply, before briskly making her exit, the glimmer of her ostentatious diamond necklace almost blinding in its brilliance. As the lunch break commenced, I hastily devoured my meal. reminiscing about the days when leisurely lunches were the norm before the previous president's departure. Since Samantha assumed control, the luxury of idle chatter and shared takeout had vanished. Instead, there was an unrelenting emphasis on performance metrics and contract acquisition, with Samantha often remarking, "If you have time for lunch, you have time to sell." It was a stark departure from the camaraderie we once shared, leaving me wistful for those bygone days. However, sentimentality must take a backseat today. Amidst my packed schedule of client visits, securing a new contract is imperative. While skipping pleasantries with established clients could potentially increase sales visits, I remain steadfast in my belief that nurturing personal connections is paramount. There's a unique joy in collaborating with trusted tailors and selecting couture pieces together, fostering a sense of trust that transcends mere transactions. It's these enduring relationships that compel customers to invest in our culture for their special occasions. Despite the pressing time constraints, I ensure to extend genuine greetings to our suppliers and loyal clientele. Visiting the home of an elderly customer who had entrusted me with her granddaughter's wedding couture, I inquire of the recent nuptials. The warmth in her recounting of the celebration and her satisfaction with our couture fills me with genuine happiness. When she entrusted me with her other granddaughter's wedding attire, it was truly a moment of joy. As the day unfolds, the dwindling time leaves little opportunity to pursue potential clients, resulting in a lack of new contracts secured. With the clock striking 2, I reluctantly begin my return to the office, knowing I must hurry to make it in time for the impending meeting. Each step feels heavier with the weight of unfulfilled expectations. Upon my return, Samantha's probing words greeted me, igniting a sense of dread. Her assumption that I must have secured a contract due to my absence from slacking off left me speechless. Samantha's presence, unusually early for once, seemed to amplify the tension in the room, threatening to unravel my composure. My hesitant response only seemed to exacerbate Samantha's displeasure as she kicked the desk, her voice escalating in frustration. "No results? You're becoming a liability to the company. Perhaps it's time you started looking for a new job. There's no shortage of skilled individuals, unlike someone in their 40s with no discernible talents." Her words stung, fueling my irritation as I reluctantly shared the modest progress I had achieved. Despite the positive feedback from a client who expressed interest in utilizing our services again, Samantha's reaction was far from encouraging. "And when will this potential sale materialize? How many items? At what price point? Is this a one-time occurrence or a recurring agreement?" Samantha's interrogation continued, her tone devoid of warmth or understanding, further deepening my frustration. "Listen, you seem to confuse socializing with sales. Sales isn't complete until the product is delivered and the invoice is sent. It serves us no purpose to inflate the significance of your casual conversations and boast about them." Though I felt the urge to retort against Samantha's assertion, the reality remained that I had failed to secure any new contracts. Determined to prove her wrong, I resolved to redouble my efforts and secure a contract the following day. As I began organizing for the impending meeting, Samantha unexpectedly interjected. "Change of plans. I have an appointment to attend, so let's postpone the meeting report until tomorrow," Samantha announced, already preparing to leave. Caught off guard, I couldn't help but question her decision. "Wait a moment, I was under the impression we had a meeting scheduled for today. If we don't confirm and proceed with the orders now, we risk missing deadlines. Your presence as the president is crucial. Is this appointment truly unavoidable?" I queried, met with an unmistakably irritated expression from Samantha. "It's an important dinner engagement. I don't have time to spare on this matter, so I'm leaving now," Samantha asserted, her tone brisk as she made her way towards the exit. Just before departing, she turned back to address me. "Remember, your job isn't finished after the meeting. Once the orders are placed, go out and secure at least one new contract. And don't expect any overtime pay, so give it your all," Samantha remarked with a hearty laugh before exiting, leaving behind a puzzled meeting attendee who had expected the president's presence. However, I managed to reassure them and salvage the situation. In our small-scale company, trust is paramount. This was a principle instilled by the previous president, who led by example, always attending sales meetings and diligently overseeing deliveries. It was this commitment to service that garnered trust from our community, sustaining our business thus far. Yet lately, I sensed a decline in that trust. Determined to restore it, I resolved to handle the situation with integrity and secure orders as usual. After seeing off our business partners and gaining their understanding, I immediately began preparations for further sales visits. I'll be stepping out for a while, so feel free to leave when you're ready. Thank you all for today, I announced to my colleagues, eager to take proactive steps towards rebuilding trust in our company. It was already nightfall, the workday long over, as I exchanged greetings with a few remaining colleagues before embarking on my sales rounds. The following day, I arrived at the office with renewed vigor. The previous day's cold calls had yielded promising results. I had engaged with a potential client interested in revamping their company's uniforms. Though not a major corporation, our conversation flowed smoothly, culminating in the agreement of a contract on the spot. While the initial order only encompassed summer apparel and winter sweaters, the prospect of nurturing this client relationship could lead to lucrative opportunities, including renewals and referrals to other businesses. Aware of the potential of such connections, I felt buoyant, anticipating a positive report to Samantha. However, my optimism was short-lived. Samantha, who arrived slightly late, summoned me immediately. "John, don't we have a report from yesterday's meeting? And I want to hear about your subsequent activities." "Certainly, I'll provide the report now," I responded, approaching Samantha with a sense of eagerness. Yet, upon reaching her, I noticed her rubbing her temples wearily. "Are you all right? You seem unwell, Miss President." "Just proceed," was her curt reply. A faint odor of alcohol lingered in the air, indicating she had indulged until the early hours and was now feeling the effects. Seeing Samantha in such a state left me incredulous. Despite my astonishment, I succinctly recounted the events of the previous day. We proceeded with the order as usual for this year. There was some negotiation on price, but they understood that it wouldn't change moving forward, and then... "Wait a minute, they requested a discount, didn't they? And you resisted, insisting on raising prices," Samantha interjected, her bloodshot eyes fixed on me with intensity. "No, that's not the case. While we ideally would adjust prices to account for inflation, given that we're offering similar products to other companies, it's challenging to implement such changes without impacting their profit margins. Unfortunately, they weren't receptive to that idea," I clarified, bracing for Samantha's reaction. Infuriated by my response, Samantha lashed out. "That's precisely why they're taking advantage of us. We need to assert ourselves like they do. What's your plan? It's not about their profits. Our profitability should be the priority." Though she held the title of president, I couldn't align with Samantha's viewpoint. While assertive negotiation is crucial, prioritizing one party's profit over the other can be detrimental, particularly in intercompany transactions. Recognizing that further debate would only escalate tensions, I proceeded with my report from the previous day. "We'll reassess the pricing structure moving forward. Additionally, I'm pleased to report that we secured a new contract," I announced, hoping to garner at least a modicum of approval from Samantha. "Not bad. What's the projected profit margin?" Samantha inquired, displaying a faint glimmer of interest. "We've acquired an order for summer clothing and winter sweaters from a small-sized company with a few dozen employees. While it's not a monumental contract, it represents a promising foothold for potential future opportunities," I explained, eager to highlight the potential for growth. However, Samantha's response was disheartening. "Is that all? And it's not even culture? It seems your efforts outside of regular work hours have yielded little." "Truly disappointing," Samantha remarked, her words piercing through my optimism. At that moment, I felt a surge of frustration and disillusionment wash over me, reaching my breaking point. "Excuse me, but it seems you misunderstand the nature of this job. It's the relationships and connections we cultivate that drive our success, not just immediate profits," I asserted firmly, challenging Samantha's narrow focus. Though taken aback by my boldness, Samantha quickly reverted to her usual haughty demeanor. "Understood. It appears we're not compatible." "You needn't come in from tomorrow," Samantha declared, drawing a decisive line. I had reached my breaking point. Continuing under such leadership was untenable. "Understood. I resign effective today." "Thank you for the opportunity," I responded without hesitation, knowing that I couldn't continue in an environment that disregarded the importance of meaningful connections. With that, the decision was made for me to leave the job I once loved. Alone in the empty room, I grappled with uncertainty about my future. Despite leaving abruptly, I had nowhere to turn. My modest salary had left me with little in savings, and the prospect of financial instability loomed large. Then, unexpectedly, a familiar name flashed across my smartphone screen: Tom Wilson. We had attended college together, sharing fond memories and occasional outings. Though our interactions had dwindled in recent years, the call from an old friend filled me with hope. "Long time no see, how have you been?" Tom's voice carried warmth and familiarity, offering a glimmer of comfort in my moment of uncertainty. "Indeed, it's been too long. I'm doing well. You sound great too, John." Tom greeted me warmly, though his next words cast a shadow over our conversation. "How's work?" "Knowing you, John, I'd imagine you're excelling as a capable leader with a strong support network." "It's a bit complicated. I've actually been unemployed for a while now," I confessed, feeling a pang of disappointment even in Tom's sympathetic response. Despite his usual upbeat demeanor, Tom seemed momentarily at a loss for words. "It's been challenging," I added, trying to lighten the mood. "It must have been tough. Let's not dwell on it over the phone. How about we meet up for drinks? It's a sudden invitation, but what do you say about today?" Tom proposed, and I eagerly accepted. The prospect of catching up with an old friend was a welcome distraction, and I felt a deep-seated need to confide in someone. We settled on a pub we used to frequent and agreed to meet later that day. I was taken aback. "You clashing with the president and leaving the company in such a dramatic fashion. You used to avoid conflicts at all costs, always quick to apologize even when it wasn't warranted," Tom remarked, genuinely surprised by my recent upheaval. I was surprised myself, but I couldn't reconcile with the new president's approach. It's one thing not to understand the intricacies of fieldwork, but disregarding the needs of clients and partners entirely was a deal-breaker, I explained, grateful for Tom's receptive ear. Despite years of distance between us, I was comforted by the familiarity and openness of our conversation. "Did you always work in sales at that company?" Tom inquired, delving deeper into my professional history. "Sales was certainly a big part of my role, but I also dabbled in website development and attempted to introduce new products. It was enjoyable, but unfortunately, budget constraints hindered our progress," I explained to Tom while showing him the company's website on my smartphone, proudly revealing that I had created it myself. "Did you really design this? I assumed it was outsourced." "It's just as professional as any other site," Tom marveled, impressed by my handiwork. The previous president emphasized the importance of a website that would appeal to younger demographics, so I dedicated myself to learning. While couture is undeniably beautiful, the industry is facing challenges. I had to think outside the box, I elaborated, recalling the efforts I had invested in the project. "But with our company's size, there are limitations," Tom observed, leaning in attentively as I continued. "True, but I had ideas that I wasn't able to fully realize," I confessed, seizing the opportunity to share my aspirations with Tom. "The demand for everyday culture may be declining, but there's a growing need for attire for special occasions and social media appearances. By focusing on these niche markets and catering to inbound demand, I believe we can chart a successful course forward," I explained passionately, articulating my vision for the future. Indeed, I had aspirations beyond just culture. I envisioned introducing high-quality leather goods under our brand at a slightly lower price point. Offering consumers affordable yet luxurious products would not only be appreciated, but could also yield substantial profit margins. "We can't rely solely on thin margins to sustain our business," I explained to Tom, elaborating on my vision for diversification. Tom listened intently, his arms crossed as he contemplated my words. "So, was it the lack of initial investment, or did you abandon the idea due to insufficient funds?" "It was a combination of both, along with the current president's strong opposition," I admitted. She argued that a culture shop shouldn't stray into other ventures. I understood her desire to preserve the legacy of the previous owner's cherished culture shop without deviating from tradition. However, it's becoming increasingly difficult to resist the inevitable changes brought about by time and the declining industry. I had hoped to inject new ideas into the company, but they weren't well received. Finishing his beer in one gulp, Tom turned to me with a serious expression. "John, how about joining my company? I'll offer you a fixed salary equivalent to what you were earning, plus commission on sales. It's a pretty good deal, don't you think?" His eyes held a sense of determination. I was taken aback by Tom's offer to join his company. I had known he was running his own brand as a sole proprietor, primarily online without a physical store, but I never imagined he could afford to hire someone like me. When I expressed my surprise and sought confirmation, Tom chuckled and reassured me, "You underestimate me. While my main business operates online, relying on outsourcing alone isn't sustainable in the long run. It's time for expansion, and I believe bringing you on board is the right move." He leaned in, whispering the impressive turnover of his store and his monthly earnings, leaving me in shock. The amount he made in a month far exceeded my yearly income. "So, I'm looking forward to having you join us. I'll be counting on you starting next week," Tom concluded, and we agreed to formalize the contract later, sealing my employment at his company. Upon joining Tom's company, I wasted no time in making an impact. I revamped the website, making product searches easier and more intuitive. The result was a tenfold increase in page views almost immediately. Additionally, I introduced suits and leather accessories to augment the range of products, which had previously consisted mainly of t-shirts. The quality and usability of these new additions were well received, and positive word of mouth quickly translated into increased sales that outstripped those of the t-shirts. Hey, the orders just keep pouring in, but production can't keep up. Can you help us out?" Tom exclaimed, overwhelmed by the surge in demand. Offering high-quality products at affordable prices, coupled with the brand reliability he had built over time, I felt a sense of fulfillment being able to implement ideas that were previously hindered by budget constraints. As purchase notifications continued to flood in on the tablet, I realized production was nearing its limit, leaving Tom both pleased and scratching his head. "Your former company let go of a real talent. It's not just about timing or environment, it takes skill. But I appreciate the compliment," I admitted humbly, reflecting on the journey that led me to this moment of success alongside Tom. As my smartphone rang, displaying Samantha's name on the screen, I couldn't help but feel a pang of apprehension. Curiosity got the better of me, and I nervously answered the call. "Hello, John. Something terrible has occurred. Can you return? I need you back right away. Is that possible?" Samantha's voice sounded more frantic than I had ever heard it, prompting me to listen intently. "What's happened?" I inquired, my concern growing with each passing moment. "Our couture clientele has threatened to take their business elsewhere if you're not present. Additionally, our partners are specifically requesting your involvement, and the company website is experiencing ongoing issues due to a lack of updates. Can you return promptly to assist?" Even though I had parted ways with the company, I responded courteously. "I understand the urgency, but I don't believe it's appropriate for me to directly engage with clients anymore. However, I'm willing to address the website and system issues on my next day off." I didn't formally hand over that responsibility, so I accept full responsibility for any oversights, I explained calmly, attempting to offer a reasonable solution. Despite my efforts to accommodate, Samantha's response indicated dissatisfaction. "What you mean? Just come back. Considering everything the company has done for you, why are you hesitating?" Samantha's tone was a mix of urgency and frustration. "I was let go from the company. Are you suggesting a rehire?" I questioned, trying to clarify the situation. "Don't be so arrogant. I assume you're struggling financially now, right? I can offer you the same salary as before, so there's no need to worry," Samantha retorted, her tone dripping with condescension. "Apologies for the interruption," Tom interjected, unable to contain his laughter. He mimed a gesture of encouragement, silently urging me to stand my ground against Samantha's presumptuous offer. "Do you have any idea about my current salary? I likely earn in a month what you make in a year. In fact, my current salary could surpass the annual revenue of my former company within just a few months," I calmly asserted, making it clear that financial incentives weren't a compelling reason for me to return to my old workplace. Despite cherishing memories from my previous job, I found fulfillment in my current position and had no desire to work under such leadership again. After politely bidding Samantha farewell, I ended the call. Since joining Tom's company, our operations had grown exponentially. With my contributions, we forged partnerships with outsourcing firms and attracted new talent, leading to rapid expansion. Witnessing the success of products I helped develop being embraced by consumers and shared across social media, I felt a profound sense of satisfaction. Amidst my hectic schedule, I was interrupted by a message from a newly hired clerk informing me of a visitor. Intrigued, I made my way to the reception room, where I was surprised to find Samantha waiting. "John, I'm begging you, please reconsider coming back to our company," Samantha pleaded, her desperation palpable. Despite her earnest plea, I remained resolute in my decision to move forward and declined her offer. "What happened? Let's hear the details first," I urged Samantha, guiding her to sit on the sofa. She appeared visibly worn out, a stark contrast to her once vibrant demeanor. "Since you left, we've been hemorrhaging customers. It's not just individual clients. Even our corporate partnerships are crumbling. I can barely cover the employees' salaries anymore. If things continue like this, we'll be forced to shut down the shop." "I need your help," Samantha confessed, her voice tinged with desperation. While I couldn't help but sympathize with Samantha's plight, it was clear that she had brought this situation upon herself by prioritizing profits over communication and relationship building. It was inevitable that partners would abandon ship if they felt neglected. "I'd like to assist, but I'm currently overwhelmed with responsibilities at my current company. I'm sorry, but I can't offer you immediate help," I responded, regret lacing my words. In a last-ditch effort, Samantha implored me for assistance, clutching at straws. "Samantha, it's time to gather your strength. Have you exhausted all possible avenues? Now is the moment to take decisive action. Rebuilding trust requires face-to-face interactions, understanding their needs, and showing empathy for their concerns. Please dedicate yourself to what you've neglected until now. It's the only way forward," I advised firmly yet empathetically. With newfound resolve, Samantha wiped away her tears and nodded resolutely. "You're right. I've made mistakes, but I'll start rectifying them from this moment onward." As I reflected on Samantha's plea for help, I couldn't shake the feeling of powerlessness that gripped me. Despite my genuine desire to assist, the prospect of starting anew seemed daunting and nearly impossible. Thoughts of the predecessor, to whom I owed so much, weighed heavily on my mind. I was determined to prevent the beloved company from succumbing to bankruptcy, but amidst the demands of my current responsibilities, I struggled to conceive of any actionable solutions. Frustrated, I bit my lip, grappling with the enormity of the situation. Several years had passed since I joined Tom's company, and during that time, our growth had been exponential. With each expansion came an increase in the number of companies we engaged with. "John, what do you think of this?" "I believe it would be perfect for an important dinner date," Samantha proposed eagerly, seeking my opinion. "It's fantastic. Exactly as I envisioned, and the fabric is exquisite," I replied, genuinely impressed. The response to our announcement on social media was overwhelmingly positive, culminating in a significant order placement. "We'd like to place an order worth $50,000 with your company for now." "Thank you so much," the client expressed their gratitude. Following this successful transaction, the performance of Tom's company soared to new heights, prompting the establishment of new departments and the hiring of additional staff. I played a pivotal role in developing hit products, particularly in the suit department. By infusing culture designs and fabrics as accents into our suits, we garnered praise not only from domestic customers but also from international clientele, expanding our market rapidly. The challenge of securing a steady supply of quality fabric and forging connections with culture-focused companies led me to reach out to Samantha for assistance. To my surprise, Samantha not only sourced the fabric we needed, but also provided invaluable consumer-oriented suggestions, resulting in a product that exceeded our initial expectations. "I truly appreciate your help, Samantha." "Thank you," I expressed my gratitude, noting the slight blush that colored Samantha's cheeks. "Have my efforts made a difference? I've learned so much from you, John." Despite holding the title of president, I realize now how misguided I was in my approach. I was consumed by a desire to assert my authority in an industry I knew little about. It was a grave mistake. But thanks to your guidance, I've learned the importance of fostering relationships with employees and partners, ultimately earning the trust of the community. "I'm confident that my company will continue to thrive," Samantha reflected sincerely. Meanwhile, Tom, who had always been immersed in his work, found himself embarking on a new chapter as he tied the knot with a significant partner. As I witnessed Tom's happiness on his wedding day, I couldn't help but share in the joy as if it were my own. "Congratulations, you're absolutely radiant," I exclaimed, admiring Tom's appearance. "Well, it's all thanks to the impeccable design of this suit. I just hope I can live up to its elegance," Tom replied with a chuckle. Sharing in the laughter, we exchanged heartfelt wishes, savoring a moment of joy that illuminated the routine of our everyday lives and transformed a fleeting occasion into a cherished memory. It was a reminder of the transformative power of clothing, and I felt privileged to be part of an industry that wielded such influence. With renewed determination, I resolved to continue crafting work that brought beauty and joy to the lives of others. "You overheard our conversation yesterday, didn't you?" My eldest son and his wife are returning home for the birth of their child. So, I need you to clear your stuff up to the yard. Excuse me, but you can't have kids anyway. You'll even help with my son's work. The least you could do is make some room. I'm paying $10,000 in rent, and this is getting too tiresome to deal with. I've been living with my mother-in-law, but now she wants me out of the house because my brother-in-law and his wife are returning. Between my mother-in-law, brother-in-law, his wife, and my husband, this house is full of problems. I've been trying to keep things running smoothly, but it's becoming a hassle to think about it all. I'm done thinking. Okay, I'll leave, but I can't just put my belongings in the yard. So I'll come back later to pick them up. You're leaving? Thank you, that's a big help. Ignoring my pleas, my mother-in-law, I started packing my things and left the house. 7 seconds after stepping out the door, I took out my phone and called the junk removal service. Once I stopped thinking, no one could stop my actions. I'm Linda, a 40-year-old IT consultant. My husband, Mark, is also 40 and runs 3 restaurants as a sole proprietor. We're both 40 and people often assume we've been married a long time and have a kid or two, but we're actually newlyweds. We both live as workaholics and didn't marry until this age. I had given up on marriage just before turning 40, but a random visit to a bar after work changed my mind. This your first time here? Mark asked. Yes, that's right. I replied. Feeling comfortable in Mark's restaurant, I started visiting frequently as a regular. I always sat at the end of the bar, and it became normal for Mark to chat with me while I ate. What does an IT consultant do? Mark asked. Introducing it to companies, strategic planning. I've worked with restaurants too. Once I suggested a tablet-based ordering system to reduce labor costs and improve efficiency, I replied. Slowly, I was drawn to his dedication to his work, and likewise, Mark grew fond of me, seeing that I was a hardworking person. I'm always busy with work and can't talk much. How about we go out for dinner sometime? Mark suggested. Excited about the chance to dine with a restaurateur, I eagerly agreed. We started dating, and 2 years later, as we both turned 40, we decided to get married. Feeling shy about being a bride at 40, I asked my husband to skip the wedding ceremony and we just took some photos of us dressed up. After we got married, I moved from my apartment to my husband's house, a 3-story building with a garden and parking located in a high-end area. The rent is apparently around $10,000. Some might think it's unthinkable to live with a mother-in-law right after getting married, but I'm 40, so I don't mind much. Plus, my mother-in-law is 70 and my father-in-law has passed away, so living together seemed necessary when my husband suggested it. I immediately agreed, but after moving in with my mother-in-law, I regretted accepting so quickly. When I moved into my husband's house, besides the bedroom for us, I even got a lavish office room for myself. His house seemed too big for just 2 people, with many spare rooms. Once I settled in, I asked my husband a simple question. Why do we need such a big house just for you and your mother? I have a brother 3 years older than me. He left home after college, and I've lost touch with him for the most part. He hasn't been home at all, and it's been a few years since I've heard from him. He's such a man that one day he might get into trouble and come back to me and Mom, right? So we decided to rent a bigger house, my husband explained. I think it's a little too big, I said. Well, I got married, and you came, so I guess it all worked out, my husband said with a smile as he unboxed my books and arranged them on the shelf. He talked about his brother Daniel from his story. It seems Daniel is aimlessly hopping from job to job, but my husband doesn't think badly of him. Don't talk about that kid. What if he really comes back? My mother-in-law appeared at the doorway of what would be my office, seemingly checking on us. It appears she doesn't have a good opinion of him, unlike my husband. It's understandable for a mother to show a cold reaction to an eldest son who shirks his responsibilities. However, I'm worried that my husband and my mother-in-law might clash over his brother someday. Also, I'm not too fond of you either, Mom. Come on, we're going to live together now, so stop saying things like that, I said. I'm not saying you should leave. I just need to make things clear from the start. My mother-in-law walked away, her slippers making a padding sound. I'm sorry, I'll talk to her, my husband said. It's okay. I got a similar talk when we met for the wedding. I'll build a relationship with your mother as we live together, I replied. I took a book from my husband's paused hands and placed it on the shelf. It seems she doesn't like my age. I'm 40, so it's not impossible to have children, but I guess it's a challenging thought. Also, Mark's elder brother Daniel is not married and has no children, so there's a high chance that my mother-in-law won't get to see her grandchildren. That's why she's disappointed and wishes Mark had married someone younger. To her, Daniel, who doesn't fulfill his role as the eldest son, and I, who can't fulfill my role as a wife in her eyes, are probably the same. I understand her feelings, but I can't turn back the clock on my body, so there's nothing I can do about that one. Once the move was completely finished, and our married life officially began, my mother-in-law's coldness towards me became evident. She ignored or avoided me when I spoke and tried to have as little to do with me as possible. It's a bit lonely, but since there's no harassment or physical violence, I guess I should consider it okay for now. I can build a relationship with her over time, but more pressing is my concern for Mark. Are you okay with your work? I asked him. No, it's pretty bad. I need to take action soon, but it's tough to arrange the finances, Mark replied, sitting at the dining table with his head in his hands. I stopped doing the dishes and sat down in front of him to listen. These are tough times. Prices are soaring, expenses climbing, and customers are tightening their wallets. There's no end in sight if this keeps up. We might have to close another one of our stores, Mark continued, about a year into our marriage. The situation at Mark's restaurants worsened. One of the 3 stores had already closed, and it seemed another might have to shut down too. Seeing Mark's troubled face made me feel distressed, but my mother-in-law seemed unaffected by these troubles. You're Mark's wife, but you don't help out at the store. You just do your own job. Can you really say you're fulfilling your role as a wife? My mother-in-law's voice pierced through the air from the living room as she overheard our conversation. I wondered what she was thinking, but she has her own way of seeing things. Mark has been running his own restaurant for nearly 10 years, overcoming various challenges. I believe he'll pull through this time too. You, his wife, shouldn't be making that face. Are you trying to feed into his anxiety and make him fail? What a terrible wife, she shouted again, her words filled with spite and venom. I knew she wasn't just trying to fire me up, but she wasn't entirely wrong. I took her words positively and decided to support Mark to the fullest, smiling reassuringly at my anxious husband. A year later, just as she said, Mark managed to turn this situation around and avoided closing a second store. See, I told you, I said to my mother-in-law. A stupid wife who can't even trust her husband. Don't drag Mark down, she replied, lashing out at me without reservation. The relationship with her might seem to have worsened, but since Mark's business is doing well, I'll consider it a break-even situation. I thought things were balancing out, but it turned out to be a clear negative for me. Mark. Daniel called for my brother, my mother-in-law suddenly said. Yes, Daniel's girlfriend is pregnant. That's great news. She's a 32-year-old who worked at the same bar as Mark. They asked, something. Why are you being so formal all of a sudden? I asked. Daniel is a freelancer and so is his pregnant girlfriend. With a baby on the way, they're struggling. They asked if they could move into this house and if they could work at your restaurant, my mother-in-law explained. I was contemplating how to confront Mark about the affair from the dining room when my mother-in-law came into the living room and started talking to him. The conversation was about Daniel, whom I've never met, and I was completely left out as they continued talking. It was a strange scene. She used to dislike Daniel for not fulfilling his role as the eldest son, yet now she was asking Mark to welcome him. The reason was simple, the grandchild. She had given up hope of seeing a grandchild, but now saw an opportunity and completely changed her stance. She was even planning to offer them a home and jobs. Ah, okay. Mark finally replied, looking back at me with a clearly troubled expression. Come on, it's a good thing. Daniel is in trouble and you, Mark, have the means to help him, my mother-in-law said. I felt a sense of unease. Is it not odd to have Daniel and his family move in? I looked at Mark in the living room from the dining area, and he seemed to share my concern. But with my mother-in-law's sudden decision, it seemed we were both in for some unexpected changes. I grappled with Mark's inability to say no to his mother. I had hoped he would stand up to her, but it seems it was just wishful thinking. He kept glancing at me, probably worried about my reaction. The worsening relationship with my mother-in-law, Mark's affair, now living with Daniel and his family, the problems just kept piling up. Overwhelmed and not knowing where to start, I decided to abandon thinking for today and just go to sleep. The next day being a holiday and probably due to extreme mental fatigue, I slept in until late morning. Mark was at work, so it was just my mother-in-law and me at home. Dreading what she might say about my sleeping in, I reluctantly headed to the living room. "You sure slept in. Must be nice to have such leisure," she said, surpassing my expectations. "You heard Mark and me talking yesterday, right? Daniel and his wife are coming back for a maternity leave visit, so move your stuff out to the yard." Excuse me, I was still groggy from sleep. Did she really mean I should live in the yard? Or was she telling me to leave the house? "You can't have kids anyway. You don't help with Mark's work, so you should at least make room for Daniel and his family. We have 2 spare rooms left, so if you leave and your office is free, we can have a bedroom and a nursery for Daniel's family and a storage room for their stuff. Don't you think the room count and usage are just perfect?" It seems she was indeed telling me to leave, but a storage room for Daniel's family. I'm being kicked out to make room for a space that doesn't seem necessary. Originally, I was allowed to use the office because there were spare rooms, and I don't mind if it's gone. A bedroom for Mark and me is enough. Daniel's family can live here without me leaving. Realizing that my mother-in-law now sees no reason for me to be in this house as a wife since she can see her grandchild and I'm paying $10,000 in rent, I'm too tired to deal with all this. I decided to clear my mind and give my brain a rest. Silent with my mother-in-law, the only sound in the living room was the ticking of the clock. "Okay, time to leave," I said, having rested my mind. I decided it's too much trouble to worry about what happens to Mark, my mother-in-law, Daniel's family, and their future. "Understood. I'll leave. I can't put all my belongings in the yard, so I'll come back later to pick them up," I declared. "You're leaving? Thank you, that helps," my pleased mother-in-law said, ignoring my words. I started packing my things and left the house. 7 seconds after stepping out the door, I took out my phone and called a junk removal service. My decision, made after stopping my overthinking, couldn't be stopped by anyone. Let them all regret this choice later. Having left the house, I decided to stay at a hotel for the time being. I had called the junk removal service, but they needed some time to prepare. This worked out since I wanted some time too. 2 weeks after leaving, I rented an apartment and started living alone. I haven't heard from Mark since then. He probably thinks I'll come back eventually. The thought of Mark taking the current situation lightly infuriates me. However, today is the day after his restaurant's day off. I expect a call from Mark when he visits the restaurant for a lunch prep. "Hey, what's going on here?" "The restaurant is completely empty," Mark exclaimed over the phone. Just as I thought, I chuckled. "Mark, I could explain over the phone, but it would be more efficient if your mom was there too. I'm heading to the house now. Can you come back? You could open the restaurant anyway, right?" I couldn't help but laugh before hanging up, amused by Mark's reaction. "What on earth is this? The restaurant's fridge, cooking equipment, tables, all the important stuff is gone. Did you do this? Do you think you can get away with this for free?" As soon as I arrived at the house, my mother-in-law started yelling at me. It seems Mark had explained half of the situation. There was an unfamiliar couple in the living room, apparently Daniel and his wife. They looked confused and anxious, not fully grasping the situation and my mother-in-law's extreme anger. "It's my restaurant, so there shouldn't be a problem with me starting the closing process or having the items I bought disposed of by a junk removal service, right?" I countered. "Huh? Your restaurant? What are you talking about? Why don't you explain, Mark? You haven't told your mom, have you? You remember that I still have the main restaurant and the second branch, and the second one was in a financial crisis, right?" Mark began. "Yes, of course. You worked hard to turn it around, changing the tables, chairs, signboard, the restaurant's atmosphere, bringing in new cooking equipment, expanding the menu, and replacing the fridge and freezer to accommodate the new menu, right?" My mother-in-law nodded. "Well, about that, Linda actually paid for those expenses," Mark confessed. Hearing Mark's words, my mother-in-law looked perplexed. She seemed to be trying hard to understand but probably lacked the full information to grasp everything. Mark continued, looking uncomfortable, as if he was holding back a bathroom break. Seeing that this was going nowhere, I decided to explain. Before turning 40, I was single and working in night consulting. We didn't have a wedding ceremony, nor did we buy a new house after getting married, so I had saved up quite a bit of money. I lent Mark $200,000 to help turn around his struggling second restaurant branch. $200,000? But you can't just hand over such a large amount of money to your spouse, right? My mother-in-law exclaimed. That's why I decided to buy the rights to the second branch and become its owner, I explained. I left most of the management to Mark, so there wasn't much for me to do as the owner. The only change was that Mark shifted his focus from the main branch to the second one for its recovery. When Mark's restaurant was in crisis, I had to show my concern alongside him. It was when my mother-in-law yelled at me for not showing enough trust in my husband that I decided to support Mark to the fullest. My form of support was giving him the money I had saved during my single years. "Mark, is this true?" my mother-in-law asked. "Yeah, it's true. She said it was okay if I failed and wasted the $200,000. She gave me the money, but since it was such a large amount, it was going to fail anyway. She suggested becoming the owner. The plan was to pay back the borrowed $200,000 from the restaurant's earnings. But it was simpler for Linda to become the owner and have the restaurant's income go directly to her. It also meant that she could decide whether to close the restaurant or not. It's a lie. Can something like that really happen?" my mother-in-law exclaimed. "I understand it's hard to believe hearing this all of a sudden. That's why I brought some evidence," I said, spreading documents like the business license transfer of rights agreement and lease agreement on the table, proving that I was the owner of the restaurant. My mother-in-law's face turned red as she confirmed my name on those documents. "Why didn't you say anything about this? You always talked about how you believed in Mark and how the restaurant was recovering, right?" she demanded. "Even before we got married, you always encouraged Mark like that. He felt pressured by your words but tried to live up to your expectations. Not wanting to disappoint you as the head of the household, you're pretty cold to people like me and Daniel who don't fulfill their roles, right? That's why Mark couldn't tell you he borrowed a large sum of money from me. He could have just told me. That's why Mark couldn't speak his mind, because you get upset easily. People like my mother-in-law often don't realize they're putting pressure on others. They might think it's just a small thing to say, but for the one under pressure, it's a huge burden, not something they can easily talk about. And even if they did speak up, you would likely be disappointed and start complaining. It was essential not to let Mark's spirit break under her constant jabs, especially when the restaurant was finally turning around. That's why I kept quiet too. But I really wish she had refused when Daniel and his family were coming back. Probably Mark thought it was work-related and agreed without thinking much, I admitted. "Mom, Linda, I'm sorry. This situation is my fault for not being decisive enough. If I had managed the restaurant well from the start, Linda wouldn't have had to lend her money. And if I wasn't such a weakling, I could have told you the truth. If Linda decides to close the restaurant, then that's it. But what about the part-time workers?" Mark said. "Don't worry. In the past 2 weeks, I've already informed everyone about closing the restaurant, and they've all understood. For those interested, I've arranged part-time work at other restaurants through my IT consulting contacts," I assured. "That's a relief. So everyone was in on this, Linda showing me an empty restaurant as a surprise, and everyone keeping the closure for me?" my mother-in-law asked. "Mark, I'm sorry too. I've been pressuring you and Linda. I'm sorry for everything up to now. I won't tell you to leave again." My mother-in-law apologized, and it seemed as if everything was resolving nicely. But that's a misunderstanding. I'm far from being satisfied, and the discussion is far from over. "Let's settle this matter next," I said, pulling out divorce papers. "What's this? A divorce paper?" Mark picked up the papers in shock. "Why a divorce? This is supposed to be a reconciliation, right? Don't just assume we've reconciled. You might think it's a secret, but I know about your affair with the part-timer. All the part-time workers knew about it too," I said, displaying an image on my smartphone sent by a part-time worker showing Mark entering a hotel. Anyone can take such evidence, not just the police or detectives. Getting the second branch back on track gave you too much confidence. "You really got carried away," I concluded. I remarked that as the owner of the restaurant, I couldn't just stand aside from the day-to-day operations. Even though I couldn't do much in terms of daily management, I made it a point to visit from time to time. During these visits, the part-time workers complained to me about Mark's affair and asked for my help. When I promised to handle it, they provided incredible support. They leaked information about Mark's affair, sent me proof, and even kept silent about the restaurant's closure from him. Wait a minute, closing the second branch and a divorce? What's going to happen to the rent for this place? My mother-in-law's voice shook. I haven't mentioned that yet. I've been paying the entire rent of $10,000 a month for this house. Is that also true? Mark's shoulders slumped. It's true. When the restaurant's revenue started falling, Linda started paying half of it. But as revenue continued to drop, the amount she had to cover increased. Eventually, I ended up paying it all, $10,000 a month. It's the same as my salary, so I paid all the rent. And Mark covered other living expenses like food and utilities. So if Mark gets divorced and only has the main restaurant left, obviously living here won't be an option anymore, I stated matter-of-factly. Mark and my mother-in-law seemed deflated after hearing my words. They slumped as if they had exhausted themselves in a boxing match. Daniel and his wife, now somewhat understanding the situation, hesitantly joined the conversation. What does that mean? We came back here and can't live here? Sorry, Daniel. Right now, I don't have the means to help you with a restaurant or a house, Mark explained. Come on, do something. We're having a baby, at least give me a job. We have enough part-time, Daniel protested. The argument escalated, and it became clear that the future was uncertain for everyone involved. Witnessing the brothers dispute over their mother, the mother-child relationship also deteriorated. Now Mark and his mother are living together reluctantly in a smaller apartment, hardly talking and creating an awkward atmosphere. After the divorce, I first dealt with closing down the restaurant. It was a bit of a hassle, but as the owner, it was my responsibility. However, the fridge, cooking equipment, tables, and chairs I had removed were fairly new, so I managed to sell them at a good price. Adding just a little more money allowed me to finish the restaurant's closure, I recounted. Though it was a brief period, being a restaurant owner and handling its closure was an experience. I believe these experiences will be useful in my IT consulting work someday. I guess work suits me better than marriage. Convinced of this, I continue to work hard today. After the tumultuous events that unfolded, the conclusion of this saga brought a mix of resolution and uncertainty. I continued. The revelation of the true ownership of the restaurant, coupled with the exposure of Mark's affair, exposed the fractures in the family. The decision to close the second branch of the restaurant added a layer of financial stress and uncertainty about the future. Despite the apologies, it became clear that reconciling the strained relationships would be a complex and ongoing process, I added. The introduction of divorce papers, a decisive move by Linda, added another layer of complexity to this situation. The betrayal of trust both in the marriage and the business became a pivotal point that left the characters grappling with the aftermath. Linda's firm stance indicated that she was unwilling to overlook the breach of fidelity and was determined to take control of her life, even if it meant ending the marriage, I noted. As the fallout extended to Daniel and his family, the once close ties between the brothers strained, revealing the fragility of familial bonds under pressure. The uncertainty about living arrangements and financial stability left everyone involved facing an uncertain future. The emotional toll of the conflicts was palpable as seen in the strained relationships and the awkward atmosphere that settled over the characters, I explained. In the end, the story leaves us with a sense of closure regarding the restaurant's closure and Linda's decision to end her marriage. However, it also leaves many questions unanswered about the characters' futures and whether they can rebuild their lives and relationships after the storm that shook the foundations of their family. The resolution, while bringing some clarity, marks the beginning of a new chapter for each character as they navigate the aftermath of the choices made and the consequences faced, I concluded.
Mom, hey Mom, wake up. I was suddenly shaken awake, my eyes barely open to see my daughter's anxious face looming in my blurry vision. Slowly, I sat up and asked her, "What's wrong? Did you have a nightmare?" "No, Mom, please. We need to run away from Dad now, hurry." With that single word, my groggy mind snapped to alertness. What followed was a shocking revelation from my daughter that left me dumbfounded. My name is Sarah. I'm a 35-year-old ordinary woman who works while raising my 7-year-old daughter, Emily. Our precious gem is not only adorable, but a bit unusual, or rather, has some mysterious aspects. Mom, you're forgetting your umbrella. Despite the weather forecast for the day being partly sunny with clouds, I was stopped by my daughter as I was about to leave the house. "It's fine. There's only a 10% chance of rain today. But Mom, you're going to get soaked. I saw it in a dream. Please take an umbrella with you." Reluctantly, I took the umbrella she handed me and headed to work. Lo and behold, I encountered a sudden downpour just before I was about to return home. I was surprised and came home drenched, only to be proudly greeted by my daughter, whose umbrella was also wet on the stand. "Welcome home, Mom. See, it happened just like I said." Emily has had this slight mysterious power since she was very young, accurately predicting the weather and dinner menus. It might be an exaggeration to call it a precognitive ability, but it's unusual. She sometimes feels out of place because of this, especially when playing with friends, but she doesn't seem to mind. Above all, we, her family, have accepted this as part of her uniqueness, and she's otherwise a perfectly normal, adorable girl. What concerns me more is my husband, Mike, who is the same age as me. We met through a marriage agency. Back then, I was a hard-working career woman, successful but inexperienced with relationships. Urged by my impatient parents, I registered with the agency. It might be odd for a wife to say, but Mike was even more handsome back then and instantly charmed me. Moreover, he was a feminist, and I instantly fell in love. Our relationship quickly progressed with marriage in mind. My husband and I have been married for 10 years this year. He always comes home late these days. Emily is only 7 years old, and she still requires a lot of care. Juggling her care, household chores, and work without Mike's help has been overwhelming. Everything costs money these days, and we need to save as much as we can for Emily's sake. You never know what might happen, so I'm working hard. That's what he said when I asked him about it. I can't argue with him when he says it's for Emily's sake. I've been overwhelmed with work, household chores, and solo parenting. Then one day, Mike came home early, looking extremely tense. Sensing the mood, I sent Emily away before asking, "What's wrong? Did something happen?" "I want to quit my job," he said. It was completely unexpected. After putting Emily to bed, we talked, and it turned out he'd been struggling with workplace relationships and no longer found his job fulfilling, making it a pain to go to work. "Don't blame me, I just can't take it anymore. Once things settle down, I'll find another job right away. Until then, I'll take care of everything at home," he explained. I didn't want him to quit, but forcing him could lead to worse outcomes. Reluctantly, I agreed to his request. Before long, I got serious about my job, and my husband became a stay-at-home dad. His way of doing household chores and cooking was, to put it mildly, a bit sloppy compared to when I did them. What particularly bothered me was the meals. I came home around 9 o'clock at night when my daughter went to bed and ate my husband's homemade food. But there was a lot of fried food, and the seasoning was surprisingly strong, so I always needed water. The first time I ate it, I couldn't help but confront him. "What is this? You didn't feed the same thing to our daughter, did you?" No, I made sure to prepare something with lighter flavors for the kid, and I kept the portions appropriate. I thought you'd appreciate something with a bit more flavor after a long day. Too much fried food, not enough vegetables, and the soup barely tastes like anything. I'd be fine with lighter seasoning for kids, and I wish you'd paid more attention to balancing the meals, I complained. Despite my repeated comments, the seasoning and menu hardly changed. If I tried to leave anything uneaten, he'd say, "I'll save it for our daughter to eat tomorrow." That's a joke. I'd rather eat it myself than let our daughter have it. Reluctantly, I finished my meal, and as an apology, he started offering dessert after dinner. He also began preparing a nightly drink and snack, calling it a nightcap, thinking it would please me. I hadn't been much of a drinker or late-night snacker before, but I couldn't outright reject his kindness. I appreciated his efforts in cooking and his attempts at being a good house husband, so I generally turned a blind eye, enjoying the break from household chores. About 6 months into my role as the primary breadwinner, I finally had a day off with absolutely no plans. However, I felt off from the morning and lay down feeling foggy. Lately, I've been feeling lethargic, without any fever and suffering from headaches. I fall asleep right after eating. Maybe I've been overdoing it at work. Luckily, my husband took our daughter out to a nearby large shopping mall, promising to contact me if anything came up. Grateful for his thoughtfulness, allowing me some much-needed rest, I was dozing off. "I'm back." I woke up to the sound of the front door and my husband's voice. I realized it was already evening. I had slept through the day without having lunch since before noon. Welcome back. Sorry, honey, I couldn't play with you today. Did you have fun? I asked our daughter, holding a palm-sized character mascot she must have gotten while out. But she nodded quietly, looking down, unlike her usual self. I tilted my head, puzzled by her unusual behavior. What's wrong? Did something happen? Maybe she's just tired from walking around all day. You should take a shower and rest early, okay? My husband gently placed his hand on our daughter's shoulder, and she nodded slightly before heading to her room. When she was out of sight, I quietly asked my husband, "Hey, she seemed a bit off. Did you scold her or something?" "No, I didn't do anything. I think she's just tired. Anyway, about dinner." I tensed up at his words. I was frankly fed up with his cooking. "You know I'll cook tonight. I've had a restful day and feel energized." "Oh, okay. Then I'll prepare the nightcap. I even bought dessert as usual," he smiled, lifting a bag that clearly had the logo of a famous cream puff shop. "Let's make tonight's meal low-calorie and nutritious." Later, we had dinner together and decided to sleep together for the first time. Though she smiled when it was just the two of us, I could tell she was anxious and wanted to spend as much time together as possible. "Mom, I have something to say." In the privacy of our bedroom, wrapped in blankets, my daughter whispered in a voice so faint I almost missed it. What is it?" "Please don't drink any alcohol tonight," she said. What could this be? Another instance of her slight precognitive ability? Nodding in response to my daughter's serious gaze, she closed her eyes, seemingly reassured. So before my husband could prepare our nightcap, I went to bed and decided to sleep early. Surely he wouldn't go as far as to wake me up for a drink. If he tries to wake me, I'll just pretend to be asleep. With that thought in mind, I closed my eyes. "Mum, hey Mum, wake up." I was suddenly shaken awake, my eyes barely open to see my daughter's anxious face looming in my blurry vision. I realized I had actually fallen asleep, my vision blurry as my daughter's anxious face came into view. Checking the bedside clock, I saw it was 2 a.m., and I noticed my husband, who should have been sleeping next to me, was absent. Maybe he went to the bathroom. Slowly sitting up, I asked her, "What's wrong? Did you have a nightmare?" "No, Mom, please. We need to run away from Dad now, hurry." That single word snapped me out of my grogginess. What did she just say? I asked her quietly, still in shock. Why? Why would you say that? This is our chance while Dad's not here. Because if we don't, something bad's going to happen to you, Mom, like getting sick or an accident, she explained urgently. What do you mean? I stared dumbfounded. My daughter, unable to hold back any longer, started to cry. Holding her in my lap and gently stroking her trembling back, she gradually calmed down and began to speak. According to her, while returning from the restroom at the mall, she overheard her dad on the phone. Having always been told not to interrupt when someone is on the phone, she approached quietly. Dad was saying, "Just a little longer, and she'll be gone," planning to make it look like an accident or illness. "Once that's done, we can be together with the insurance money." "Who was he talking to?" I asked, shaken. "I don't know. At first, I thought it was you, Mom, but it wasn't because Dad. He was saying bad things about you, and he said, 'I love you' to the person." My daughter was sobbing. If this was true, my husband was planning to send me to my demise. Besides, my husband is having an affair, my daughter continued. He said, "I love you" to someone, not Mom, she added. I was so shocked. I accidentally called out to Dad. Then Dad immediately ended the call and asked, "How long have you been there?" When I said, "Just now," he smiled and said, "Let's keep this our little secret from Mom. If you don't tell, you'll get a new kind and sweet mom." Tears and snot streamed down her face as she clung to me. "But I want you. I don't need another mom. I love you so much," she wailed, clinging to me. In that moment, I felt an overwhelming sense of guilt for putting her through this and anger towards my husband. My daughter had braved her fears to protect me from her own father. How scared she must have been, how much courage she must have needed. Afterwards, holding my daughter, we went downstairs to the entrance. The moment I noticed my husband's favorite shoes were missing, any slight trust I had in him vanished alongside my daughter's words. According to her, this wasn't the first time he had left in the middle of the night. She had seen him leave several times when going to the bathroom. How had I never noticed before, even in deep sleep? If my daughter rarely wakes up at night and had seen him leave multiple times, it must have been frequent. My daughter was gripping the hem of my dress tightly. Her actions made me realize there was no time to doubt my husband. That's right. This is not the time for that. I need to respond to my daughter's courage, I thought. Perhaps because I hadn't drunk any alcohol, I felt more alert and clear-headed than usual. Looking into my daughter's eyes, I said, "Emily, if we run away from Dad now, we might never see him again. Will you still come with me?" "Yes, I'm scared of Dad." "I want to be with you, Mom," she replied, her voice filled with determination. "I want to stay with you forever," she said. "All right, I made up my mind." Fortunately, my daughter was in the middle of her summer vacation. I told her to pack what she needed, and I quickly packed our bags as well. Then I was stunned as I checked the contents of the drawer where I kept our valuables. Opening another drawer that I rarely opened, my suspicion was confirmed. A surge of anger rose within me, but for now, leaving was the priority. We hurriedly left the house before dawn and decided to seek refuge at my parents' house. My parents were surprised to see us arrive so early in the morning, but they kindly welcomed us. After showing them what I found just before leaving and explaining what my daughter had told me, after the day had fully dawned, I sent a casual message. "Mom got hurt. I'm taking my daughter to help out for about a month or so. Please take care of the house while we're gone. Got it? Leave everything here to me." He was surprisingly calm about his daughter and wife disappearing overnight. Clearly, he must be smirking, thinking he can now do as he pleases alone. I'll lay low for now, but I won't let this go for my daughter's sake. As soon as we arrived at my parents' house, my daughter, still with tear stains on her cheeks, fell asleep. Looking at her sleeping face, I made a certain phone call. About a month after taking refuge at my parents' house, I decided to return home, leaving my daughter with my mom. Entering the living room after unlocking the door, my smartphone in my chest pocket, my husband, who had been holding his head in front of his smartphone, gave me a forced smile, as if nothing had happened. "Oh, welcome back. Don't just come back suddenly like that. You surprised me. How about I make you a nice iced coffee with lots of milk and sugar?" If it were the old me, I might have been deceived. Not today. I don't need it. Instead, I want you to write this. I confronted my husband, who was about to head to the kitchen, with divorce papers. He sighed deeply after glancing at them. "Divorce, huh? Well, if that's what you really want, I'll agree." His reaction was expected, but it infuriated me. He casually accepted it with a smile. "I'll agree to the divorce since you're the one asking for it. But you'll meet my demands for the settlement, right?" "What are you talking about? You're the one who'll be paying." My husband looked puzzled. He shook his head unwillingly, with a forced smile. "Come on, I've been supporting you in my way, and now you're handing me divorce papers unilaterally? A good husband, the kind that skips work for affairs and plans to put his wife in danger. What are you talking about?" I couldn't help but snort at his dumbfounded face. I pulled out a small bottle filled with pills from a drawer I hardly use and showed it to him. The label read, "For stubborn insomnia, 1 pill for a good night's sleep." That's it. I bought it because I couldn't sleep well. It's obvious if you look at it. The amount hasn't decreased since I left. I'd opened and took pictures of everything before I left. Want me to compare? Don't talk nonsense. Besides, where's the proof that I gave those to you? "Everything you've been doing with your mistress. I know all about it," I said, returning to my seat with the bottle in hand. Pulling an envelope from my bag and spilling its contents, my husband froze in shock. No wonder those were printouts of messages he had sent to his mistress. It says things like, "I'm skipping work to see you. Wait for me. I quit my job so we can talk more. Love you. I've got something that'll make sure she won't wake up. I can visit you during that. Think we can be together soon. Wait for me, my princess. He sent this kind of message. Every lie about working late and his plans to make my demise look like an accident or illness were detailed. Thinking back, the meals he prepared for me were high in salt, fat, and even sugary desserts. It's no wonder my health declined. Plus, he probably tampered with my drinks while I took a shower. I didn't drink often, so I didn't notice. But when I drank the same thing at my parents' house, the difference in taste was shocking and confirmed my suspicions. I started feeling unusually tired after beginning to eat your meals. I never felt refreshed despite falling asleep quickly. No wonder, with alcohol and these pills mixing, them is the worst. Imagine what could have happened, I said, watching as my husband's face turned pale and his eyes darted around. That's how come you have this stuff. Don't tell me you snooped through my phone. That's a violation of privacy, he accused. No, I got it from her, your mistress, I said, flipping over a second envelope to show him. His face went white. No wonder. The scattered photos showed him getting cozy with a young woman right after returning to my parents' house, believing my daughter's words. Sil kept making mean comments about my husband because he chose to stay home and take care of our family instead of working. I got really upset and told everyone at her wedding dinner how Jason had supported their whole family during tough times. Let me give you some background. I'm 28 years old and my husband Jason is 29. We met 6 years ago and got married 3 years ago. We have a 1-year-old daughter together. I met Jason through my brother, who is friends with him because of their jobs. Jason used to be a police officer, and my brother owns a pizza place where Jason used to hang out. One year, my brother brought Jason home for Thanksgiving, and that's when we met. After dating for 3 years, Jason proposed, and we got married. I had met most of Jason's family before we got married, and they were usually nice to me, except for my sister-in-law Janice, who is 27. Even though Jason assured me that Janice would warm up to me eventually, she never did. She never openly showed her dislike for me in front of others. Instead, she would make subtle insults and backhanded compliments, passing them off as jokes. At first, it really bothered me, but after a while, I got used to it. I got used to ignoring Sil's mean comments because I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of seeing me upset. She never said anything rude when my husband Jason was around, probably because she didn't want to upset him. Jason knew about the tension between his sister and me and made sure I wasn't alone with her during family visits. I didn't want Jason to cut off his family because of Sil's behavior, so we just pretended everything was fine. We both tried to ignore Sil's comments, even though it wasn't easy. We didn't really have any other choice. Looking back, I wish I had spoken up instead of staying silent. I was worried about causing trouble or being seen as overly sensitive. But I couldn't stay quiet any longer, especially after what happened recently. Jason used to be a police officer, but he quit his job to be a stay-at-home dad a few months ago. I'm a working mom with a demanding job as a trauma surgeon. My husband and I were struggling to balance our careers with raising our daughter. Both of us had demanding jobs and couldn't spend much time at home. We relied on daycare and our parents to take care of our daughter when needed, but it didn't feel like enough. We felt like we were missing out on important time with her, and we worried she wouldn't have us around much as she grew up. About a year ago, my husband Jason and I had a serious talk about this. He decided to quit his job as a police officer so he could spend more time at home with our daughter. I didn't push him to make that choice, but he felt it was the right thing to do since I earned more money, and he believed it was fair for our daughter to have one of us around most of the time. I asked Jason countless times if he was sure about quitting his job to become a full-time dad. It was a big decision, and I wanted to be sure he wouldn't regret it or feel resentful toward me. But he reassured me that he was happy to take on this role. Even though he loved being a cop, he seemed genuinely content spending his days taking care of our daughter and managing the household. We talked about it recently, and he admitted that it was a bit challenging at first to adjust to being a stay-at-home dad after working for so long. But over time, he found it easier. especially because he could spend quality time with our daughter. He's really happy with how things have turned out. He used to dream of being a cop, but now his biggest dream is being a father, and I think that's pretty amazing. However, Jason's family doesn't see any beauty in our situation. I probably should have expected this, considering they're pretty traditional. While they allow women to work, there's a catch. They don't allow men to work at home. None of the men in Jason's family do household chores because they think it's beneath them. So the women end up doing both their jobs and the household work, or they're pressured to quit their jobs altogether, like my mother-in-law did. What's even crazier is that they don't see anything wrong with this setup. They think it's perfectly fine. Jason and I have talked about this, and we both agree it's a backward way of thinking. But we've never brought it up with his family because they just come up with excuses to justify their beliefs, and we didn't want to get into arguments with them. If they're happy living their lives that way, who are we to judge them? Thankfully, we found a different path for ourselves. Jason and I have always divided our responsibilities equally, and sometimes he even does more household chores if I have to work late. Now, with him staying at home full-time, he's taking care of everything at home while I focus on my job to support us. We believe that as long as we're all happy and healthy and there's food on the table, it doesn't matter who does what. However, his parents and sister strongly disagree with this. They're upset with Jason for quitting his job and staying home with our daughter. They think it makes him less of a man or something, and they've been arguing with him about it for months. I tried to step in at first, but his parents made it clear that my involvement would only make things worse. Jason didn't want me to defend him either because he didn't want to drag me into the conflict. So I decided to stay out of their way. It took them a while, but eventually they accepted our new arrangement and stopped bringing it up. It probably helped that they had other things to focus on, like Janice getting engaged. Her boyfriend, Harry, proposed after they'd been together for 2 years. Everyone was so caught up in the excitement of the engagement that they pretty much forgot about Jason's situation for a while. We were grateful for the distraction because it meant we didn't have to deal with any arguments from his family about Jason staying home. It seemed like everything had blown over, and we wouldn't have to hear about traditional gender roles again. But then, at Janice's rehearsal dinner yesterday, the topic came up again. So we had a bit of a crisis. Janice's wedding was just a day away, and we needed to figure out how to handle the situation quickly. We needed help urgently, so we posted about it hoping for a fast response. During dinner at the rehearsal dinner, Jason and I were sitting across from Janice and her fiancé Harry. Their parents and a few other family members were there too, and we were all chatting happily. Everything seemed fine, and I was relieved that we were getting along well, especially after the tension from Jason quitting his job. But then Janice suddenly changed the subject and asked me about my work. I felt really uncomfortable, but I had to answer Janice's question about my work because it seemed innocent enough. I just said everything was going well and hoped she'd leave it at that. But then she turned to Jason and made a joke about how he's now living a life of leisure since he's not working and relying on my income. She didn't stop there. She kept making jokes about how he's not in charge anymore and cracked some other mean jokes about him. Jason tried to brush it off and smile, but it was clear he was hurt. I couldn't take it anymore. It was like all the frustration from dealing with Janice and her family's outdated views just boiled over. So I decided to bring up something that nobody wanted to hear. I couldn't hold back anymore, so I told Janice that she could joke all she wanted, but Jason was still a better person than anyone in their family. I pointed out how audacious it was for her to make fun of Jason, considering that without him, she wouldn't have been able to go to college or even meet Harry. Jason had been helping his parents financially since he was 18. It was a dark time for their family when Jason's father lost his job while Jason was still in high school. Janice was too sheltered to notice the struggles in her own family, and her parents and Jason made sure to shield her from it. They never said no to her, even when they were struggling themselves. Jason had to work 2 jobs to support them while his father searched for work. Thankfully, they only had to endure this hardship for about a year. Thanks to Jason's support and some savings, Janice never knew about any of this until I brought it up at the rehearsal dinner. She was shocked, and so was everyone else, because the secret had been kept for almost a decade. Nobody was supposed to talk about it because they didn't want Janice to find out. But after all those years, I finally brought it up, and now she knew exactly how much she owed to her brother. She had no right to make fun of him or put him down. Everyone else might have kept quiet to protect her, especially Jason, but I couldn't stand by silently. After I spoke up, there was just silence at the table. After a moment, Jason and I left, and we walked back to our hotel room without saying a word. Even when we got there, we didn't discuss what had happened at dinner. I knew it would become a big deal, and so did Jason. But his silence told me he didn't think I did anything wrong, so there was no need to talk about it further. The next morning, when I woke up to the sound of knocking on our door, and it was Jason's parents. They wanted to talk to me right away. After they came in and we all sat down, they got straight to the point. They told me that the family wanted me to apologize to Janice. They felt that what I said at dinner was something they had kept from her for a long time, and it wasn't right for me to bring it up. They said it wasn't my place to say those things to her, and it had ruined the atmosphere of the evening. They also mentioned that Janice was just joking around with Jason like siblings often do, and now she was upset and couldn't stop crying, and it was all because of me. I realized I had no justification for getting so defensive and revealing such a big secret, knowing the impact it would have on their family. Janice was feeling incredibly guilty and kept apologizing to her parents, realizing she had been a burden on them without even realizing it. Her parents explained that she was having a total breakdown, which is exactly why they never wanted her to know the truth about their past struggles. They believed she was emotionally fragile and wouldn't be able to handle it, and her reactions seemed to confirm their fears. Now they want me to apologize to Janice and the rest of the family for my outburst and tell her I didn't mean what I said. I have until the end of the day to decide, but they want me to resolve things before her wedding tomorrow. There's a one-day gap between the rehearsal dinner and the wedding, so she has time for her friends to arrive. It's fortunate that I have until the evening to decide what to do. Jason believes I shouldn't apologize because I was just standing up for him, and Janice has always been rude to me, so it's time I stood my ground. I've been leaning towards the same viewpoint. However, with Janice's wedding coming up tomorrow, I don't feel good about potentially causing her to have a breakdown right before her big day. Most of her family members think I owe her an apology, but I know their opinion is biased. Even Jason's opinion might be influenced by our situation. So I've turned to Reddit for a neutral perspective. I brought up how my husband helped his family in the past because Janice kept making fun of him for being a stay-at-home father. Update 1. It's evening now, and I've read the comments. I've decided I don't need to apologize for anything. Jason and I are packing up to leave because it would be awkward if I don't apologize and still go to Janice's wedding tomorrow. We're going to tell his parents we're leaving, because it wouldn't be right to just disappear without saying anything. Jason and I discussed this earlier, and he thinks it's the right thing to do. Janice has always been rude and insensitive, and it's time she faces the consequences. Jason's family has been difficult to deal with since he quit his job. He expected them to support him, but they haven't. They make him feel bad for wanting to spend time with his daughter. We knew that they had old-fashioned views about work and household chores, but we hoped they would change. Since they haven't, it's their fault if we stop talking to them. We're happy with our lives, and if they can't be happy for us, we don't want them around. They've been negative and critical of us for months, and we don't need that kind of energy in our lives. So we stood up for ourselves because we had enough. Jason's parents didn't like it and called us selfish, saying we needed to consider how our actions would affect Janice's wedding. They thought our absence would cause a scene and take the attention away from her. Janice herself showed up after hearing the argument. She said it was okay if we didn't come to the wedding, and actually preferred it that way. But then she accused me of being selfish and trying to ruin her wedding. We ended up arguing, which wasn't great, but it gave us a reason to leave without more drama. They didn't try to stop us, which was a relief. We just want to focus on our own lives now. We might forgive them if they apologize, but that seems unlikely. Right now, we're just happy to be home with our daughter. Jason's playing with her while I write this. Our family feels perfect, no matter what anyone else thinks. Hey everyone, this update is a day after the wedding, which we didn't attend. Apparently, there was a lot of talk about us, mainly from Janice herself. It's funny because her parents were worried our absence would make the day about us. But Janice made it about us anyway. She told distant relatives about our argument, making a big deal out of it. Some people are reaching out to Jason for details, wanting to be part of the drama. We're staying out of it and being vague in our responses. We don't want to stoop to their level and get into more fights. Janice loves drama, and we don't want to give her more. We're ignoring everyone and trying to take the high road, even though they talked about us behind our backs. We just want to move on and leave the drama behind. My mother-in-law said something really hurtful to me while we were at a restaurant. She made it clear she didn't think I belonged there. She even hinted that because I wasn't her blood relative, I didn't matter as much. It made me so mad that I wanted to leave right away. As I got up to go, she stopped me and told me to pay for the meal if I was leaving early. But I wasn't about to pay for someone else's food after being treated like that. I stood my ground and refused. My name is Maya, and I work in an office. My husband Terrell and I are happy together, except for one big problem, his mom. She's always criticizing me and meddling in our lives. Even when I tell Terrell about it, he doesn't see the problem. He thinks she's just being a caring mom, but I know better. As time went on, my mother-in-law's interference in our lives got even worse. She had a key to our house, given to her by my husband, and she just let herself in whenever she pleased. She criticized everything and spread rumors about me to our neighbors. I begged my husband to move us somewhere else, but he didn't seem to care much, too caught up in his work. Then, something changed. He got a big promotion and a raise thanks to a successful project. Seeing this as our chance to make a fresh start, I suggested we start a family. Now that we have more money, maybe it's time to think about having kids, I said, hoping this would make him realize how toxic his mother's behavior was. But he had another idea. He thought if we were going to have children, we should live in a town that's better for them. There aren't many places for kids to go here, like daycare centers or parks. Shouldn't we move somewhere more family-friendly? Finally, he agreed to move, which made me even happier than his promotion did. But that happiness didn't last long. The next day, my mother-in-law showed up unannounced like she always did. I was annoyed, thinking she was going to start criticizing again, but something seemed off this time. I want to celebrate my son's promotion, so I've booked a fancy restaurant. It's really expensive, but it's classy. The food is amazing, and the staff is great. Everyone says good things about it, she told me, inviting me to come along. Sounds nice. Good for you, I said, trying to be polite, even though I was still not happy with her. Well, forget about your schedule. I really want you to come to this restaurant, she insisted. I'll take a look at my schedule, but I'm not sure if I can make it, I said. Don't say that. We really want you there, she insisted, not taking no for an answer. Even though I responded that way, she just smirked and left. It was strange because she had been excluding me before, but now she was inviting me and insisting that she'd wait. Something didn't feel right. When I asked my husband about it later, he said he had already promised his mother that we would go together. She had booked that restaurant specifically for us, and he was excited about it. Don't you feel the same way, Maya? He asked. Sorry, but I'm not excited about it. I'm worried about how much money we'll spend at such an expensive place. I really don't want to go. Just tell them I have something urgent and go enjoy yourself, I replied. Feeling uneasy about the situation. Why are you being so negative? Plus, it's not just us going to the restaurant. My brothers are bringing their wives too. It wouldn't look good if you weren't there with the whole family, my husband insisted, excited about going to a fancy restaurant for the first time. Even though I didn't want to go, I felt like I had to. My husband wasn't listening to me anymore. If he trusted my mother-in-law more than me, I decided to secretly record her behavior with a voice recorder I bought online. I had a feeling she would continue her harassment at the celebration. I planned to record it and play it for my husband later. If he still didn't believe me, I was ready to consider divorce. Making that decision made me feel a little better. Still, the day we were supposed to meet my mother-in-law at the restaurant felt really gloomy, and I couldn't stop sighing. I barely knew my husband's brothers, having only met them at the wedding, and I hadn't really talked to their wives beyond saying hello. When we got to the restaurant, the waiter led us to a big room where my mother-in-law, my husband's other brother and his wife, and the third brother and his wife were already sitting. There was one empty seat at the table. My husband looked confused. Did the waiter make a mistake with the seats? He wondered out loud. "I'll go ask. Everyone, go ahead and start eating," he said, leaving the room. As soon as he left, my mother-in-law stood up, her face looking mean. "There's no seat for you. Why would I invite a stranger who just married my son to a family celebration?" she said, sounding really rude. "So you have a choice. Prove you really want to be part of this family or leave and never come back. Decide now." "I'm leaving," I said right away. My mother-in-law looked surprised for a moment. Did she really think I'd beg her to accept me as family after this? No way. "Listen to me carefully. If you foot the entire bill for everyone here, I'll acknowledge you as Terrell's wife. I understand you must be feeling frustrated being treated like an outsider, so pay up and become part of the family," she demanded. "I already told you I'm leaving. Why should I cover the expenses for someone else's family gathering?" I shot back, turning away from her. My mother-in-law banged her hand on the table and yelled, "Can't you see? I'm offering you a chance to be part of the family. Are you really okay with remaining a stranger? Pay up." "No, I'm perfectly fine being seen as a stranger. And since I'm not family, I won't be paying for your meal. Goodbye, mother-in-law," I said firmly, and I walked out. She tried to catch up to me, but by the time she reached the entrance of the room, I was already at the exit of the restaurant. When I got home, planning to email my husband about what happened, he surprisingly returned within just 10 minutes. The waiter confirmed that there was no mistake with the reservation, and my mom was causing a scene, he explained. It seemed like my decision to stand up for myself had inspired the wives of my husband's brothers as well. They had been enduring my mother-in-law's mistreatment silently, but seeing me speak up gave them the courage to do the same. In a bold move, both of them left the restaurant, and our husbands, the eldest and third sons, hurriedly followed them. I was prepared for my mother-in-law's backlash, and sure enough, within 3 hours, the phone started ringing nonstop. It was so disruptive that I eventually blocked her calls. However, one call managed to get through from an unknown number. "Hello, sorry for calling so late. Is this Maya's mobile phone?" The man on the other end introduced himself as a police officer from the nearby police station. He informed me that after everyone left, my mother-in-law tried to eat what she could and then attempted to make me pay the bill. However, the restaurant staff, already unhappy with her behavior earlier, refused her request. They thought I wouldn't come back to pay after leaving upset. Ignoring her calls, my mother-in-law was advised to pay by card. But she didn't have one and didn't bring enough cash to cover everyone's meals. Desperate, she tried reaching out to other family members to help cover the costs, but no one responded. Frustrated and angry, she started yelling and blamed me entirely for the situation. Her anger got worse, and she ended up breaking expensive vases and flower pots in the restaurant. This caused the restaurant to call the police. The officers managed to calm my mother-in-law down, but she refused to admit any fault. The restaurant didn't get paid, and they had a difficult customer on their hands. They asked the police to escort her home. Feeling guilty for ignoring a call from the police, my husband and I reluctantly went back to the restaurant. When we arrived, the police were trying to calm my mother-in-law down. When she saw me, she glared and yelled, You're useless. This mess happened because you didn't pay the bill. It's only natural to help your mother, isn't it? Pay up now." I was completely shocked when my mother-in-law said something almost threatening, even with the police around. They had already made it clear that if no one took her home, they would either drive her to her in-laws' house in a patrol car or arrest her for leaving without paying. "Please take her away, arrest her, or do whatever you need to do. Just make her take responsibility," I said firmly, my voice firm and determined. My mother-in-law looked shocked at my words. "How could you say something so heartless? I can't believe it. Just pay the bill. It's bad luck to have a family member arrested," she pleaded. "I don't care. I'm not family, and I don't want to be associated with someone who's acting irrationally and causing a disturbance," I replied firmly, trying to leave the restaurant and leave the situation for the police to handle. However, my husband, who had stayed quiet until now, gave me a stern look. "I understand that what happened to Maya was awful, but is it really serious enough to warrant arrest?" he asked, defending his mother. "You're missing the point. She's in trouble with the police because she tried to leave without paying and caused a scene. It has nothing to do with me. Or are you suggesting that I should be responsible for paying for 6 people's meals, even though I didn't eat?" I countered. My husband fell silent, but walked past me towards the police and the restaurant staff. I knew what he was planning to do. Expecting his actions, I called out to him as he walked away. "If you're going to pay for her meal and compensate them, we're getting divorced. Think about that." My husband didn't say anything in response to my words and silently took out his wallet. Feeling hurt and betrayed, I left the restaurant and walked back home along the familiar road. I began packing my essential belongings, getting ready to leave. Just before the day changed, my husband finally returned. "Mom's not getting arrested. It seems she was really in the wrong. But the restaurant said they'd forgive her if I compensated them and promised she'd never come back. I didn't have nearly enough money, so I had my brothers come and help." "Oh, I'm so tired," he explained, his voice sounding exhausted. He kept talking about what happened after I left, seeming irritated by my lack of response. Then he noticed my packed bags and approached me. "Hey, what's with these bags?" he asked, looking confused. "I'm getting ready to leave because we're getting divorced. I told you that if you sided with her, we get divorced. You can't say you didn't hear me, neither can you," I replied firmly. My husband looked down at me, his eyes filled with astonishment. Then he lifted his gaze and began to shout, "What's happening? You've been acting so strange today. I understand that Mom did something terrible, but why do we have to get divorced? I've told you I'm being mistreated, asked, and even with evidence and others backing me up, you still choose your almost arrested mother over me. Isn't it weird that I want to divorce someone who acts like that? I've had enough." He kept saying things, but I didn't really listen. I focused on leaving the house and getting ready for the divorce. The next morning, I went straight to get the divorce papers. When I signed and handed them to my husband, he made a scene about not wanting to divorce. But when I mentioned getting a lawyer involved, he reluctantly signed, and I sent the papers off right away. Finally, I was free to be on my own again. Later on, my husband moved out and went to live with his parents. Turns out, he relied on me a lot for housework, so he couldn't manage it alone. The house soon became a mess. Not liking the untidy environment, he ended the apartment lease and went back to his parents' house. In addition, the eldest and third sons experienced similar outcomes. On the day my husband called them to help with the compensation, they each had arguments with their wives. The wives refused to pay for something that was their mother's fault, but the brothers decided to use their savings to assist their mother without consulting their wives. This led to heated arguments and cooled feelings of love, resulting in discussions of divorce. Both brothers ended up returning to their parents' homes and refusing to do any housework. Ultimately, my mother-in-law and her 3 immature sons also moved back to their parents' house. This situation became a source of gossip among the neighbors, who spread rumors that the wives had abandoned all 3 brothers. Mother-in-law dismissed these rumors, defending her sons and blaming their wives for their troubles. Upon hearing the story, my husband nodded smugly, convinced that divorcing them was the right decision. However, my relationship with the neighbors remained good, and they didn't believe the rumors. They knew about my mother-in-law's unpleasant personality and kept their distance, quietly amused by her antics. As time went on, my mother-in-law gained a reputation as a failed parent who couldn't raise her sons properly. Meanwhile, my ex-husbands earned the label of mama's boys in the neighborhood for siding with their mother instead of standing up for their wives. Despite their persistent attempts to contact me, I changed all my contact details and moved to a new house. They couldn't find us, and they spent their days constantly complaining. Since cutting ties with my mother-in-law and the others, my life has become much more enjoyable. Being free from the stress of dealing with her is a huge relief, and making new friends has been wonderful. During the divorce process, I bonded with the ex-wives of my ex-husband's brothers over our shared frustrations with my mother-in-law. Now, we often go out for meals and enjoy shopping together on weekends. I even find myself grateful to my ex-husband for introducing me to such wonderful friends. In 2 days, we're all planning to visit a new cafe. We can finally do what we want, and it feels incredibly liberating. I want to lead my own life without getting caught up in toxic relationships, and I'm genuinely thankful for the friendships I've found. I believe I would still be feeling lonely if it weren't for them. I'm truly grateful, and I hope these friendships last a lifetime. This house is mine now, Mom. You can't come in anymore. Your key won't work, so you might as well throw it away. My daughter laughed when she saw me holding the key. My things were piled up by the door. I didn't understand why my daughter was treating me like this, especially when I was still sad about my husband's death. I felt lost and confused. My name is Susan, and I'm 60 years old. My husband died recently after being sick for a long time. Many people came to his funeral and shared memories of him. We said goodbye to him with smiles instead of tears, just like he would have wanted. But even with all the support, I still felt very sad. We have a daughter named Emily. She got married and moved far away. And we haven't seen her much lately, even during holidays. She left quickly after briefly coming to her father's funeral. Before Emily got married, she was very close to us. She always said she couldn't stand the idea of living far away from us, even though we encouraged her to live independently after finding a job. She believed that meals tasted better when the family ate together. I usually came home late from work, so we made sure to have meals together on my days off. Maybe Emily said this to cheer up her father, who was getting weaker because of his illness. We were really happy and thankful for Emily's thoughtfulness. Then, Emily suddenly told us she was getting married and quickly got the marriage paperwork done. After that, she left our house in a rush. We were confused by her sudden decision. We only met her partner once and had a brief conversation with them. It seemed like they truly loved each other, and we only wished for Emily's happiness without interfering in their relationship. However, a few months after getting married, Emily stopped talking to us altogether. We worried a lot and kept sending her messages and calling her every day to check if she was okay. But she didn't reply to any of our messages or calls. Finally, when she did answer, she sounded annoyed and told us to stop bothering her. She even joked about only talking to us if we sent her money. During the day, she sounded like she was drunk and slurred her words. My husband heard all of this and just sighed deeply. Emily's behavior seemed to be influenced by her husband, Ole. After that, my husband never brought up Emily again. Some years later, Emily shamelessly asked us for money because she was having financial problems. That was the last time she and her father saw each other. Over the years, my husband and I made many memories together. We traveled and picked up new hobbies whenever he was well enough. Eventually, my husband passed away. When I came back home from his funeral, I was shocked to see movers directed by Emily piling up my belongings outside. She told them to just stack everything in a corner. When she saw me, she said, "Well, Mom, this isn't your home anymore. I've packed up your things. You'll have to find somewhere else to live before it starts raining and everything gets wet." Emily, Why are you doing this? What's going on? Please, tell me what's happening. I was just so confused, not understanding anything. What's there to explain? You already know, don't you? This house is supposed to go to Emily after me. Don't act like you don't get it. Emily said this, and then a big man stepped out from behind her. It was because of him that Emily changed. His name is Ali, and he's Emily's husband. Meeting him changed Emily completely. We were introduced to him as a regular guy who worked at a company. But later we found out he was involved in shady business stuff. When we learned about this, we couldn't understand how our honest Emily ended up with someone like Ali, and we were really worried. Emily and Ali kept us away from them, but a few years ago, they suddenly came to our house and shamelessly asked my husband for money. It shook me deeply, but my husband stayed calm and mentioned a will that even I didn't know about back then. It clearly said that this house would go to Emily and everything else to me. Now that Dad has passed away, the house belongs to Emily, so outsiders should leave quickly. You have no right to live here. Don't pretend you've forgotten. Ali kicked my things aside and sneered, but you can't just show up here all of a sudden. Seeing my stuff piled outside, I didn't know what to do. I felt completely lost. Now, Ole, don't be so harsh. Mom shouldn't stay here, but we're still family, right? Emily said this as she came closer to me while I held onto the key. Don't be so sad. You'll always be my mom. You can use this key to come to the house anytime. Don't feel too down. Then she took the key from my hand and threw it as far as she could. What's the matter with you? The key flew through the air and disappeared. I was shocked by Emily's unexpected action. Turning back to her, I said, I'm sorry about that. Upon closer inspection, I realized that the key was already useless. I forgot we changed the locks earlier. There was no point in you holding onto it, so I threw it away for you. Don't act like I've done something terrible. It's not that big of a deal. Emily and Ole looked at me in disbelief and burst into laughter. Emily's face, now completely different from before she got married, showed that she would do anything for her own benefit. I felt tears starting to form. Then I remembered my husband's gentle smile, as if he was telling me to stay strong. Emily, I understand what you're trying to say, but you're getting the wrong idea. This isn't the right place to talk. Let's go inside. I urged Emily and Ole to come inside, but they resisted. We're still moving in, and don't act like you're in charge, telling us where to talk. This isn't your house anymore. You need our permission to come in. Ali snapped back. Faced with Ali's rudeness, I insisted. We need to discuss this house. It's not yours yet. I'm just about to explain, Emily interrupted. I've called someone who can explain it clearly, and he'll be here soon. Let's go inside and have some tea. If you keep refusing, I'll call the police. They'll make me say it again. This house doesn't belong to Emily. If you understand, come inside quickly. If you try anything, I'll be the one calling the police, I said firmly, unsettling them a bit. Well, it might be the last time we listen to an old woman's nonsense. You're getting old anyway. We'll hear you out this time. But if you talk nonsense, you'll have to pay for wasting our time, Ali threatened, sitting on the sofa with his legs crossed. Emily gave me a similar glare. It seemed like they had threatened people like this before to get what they wanted. This made me feel sad. Soon, the doorbell rang, and I let a man into the living room. He was the lawyer who had been there when my husband shared the details of the will. You're the lawyer from before, right? What are you trying to say? We've seen the will that says this house goes to Emily, and Dad said so. That's the truth, isn't it? Ali argued. As I mentioned earlier, there was a misunderstanding before. The will includes a condition, and if that condition happens, the inheritance changes, the lawyer clarified. Why are you confusing us with all these complicated terms? Emily responded in frustration. Seeing their confusion, the lawyer took over to explain. A conditional bequest with revocation means the will has conditions. In your father's will, the condition was that Susan could stay in the house as long as she's healthy. Emily would only inherit it if Susan couldn't live there anymore due to health issues or passed away. Your father was very clear about this. Ali and Emily looked completely confused. Did he really say that? Even if he did, we wouldn't remember. What's this talk about revocation? Emily shook her head in disbelief. Okay, then what about those conditions? Ali asked, sounding a bit shaken but still defiant. By trying to kick Susan out of the house, you violated the conditions of the will. Because of that, Emily lost her right to inherit the house, the lawyer explained straightforwardly. Wait, so you're saying I can't inherit just because of that? That's ridiculous. Emily exploded in frustration. That's the essence of this will. Breaking that condition, whether it's minor or major, leads to revocation, the lawyer explained calmly. When did we ever break that condition? Can you prove it? Ali leaned in, clearly trying to intimidate the lawyer. The lawyer cleared his throat. There was a moving truck outside, arranged by you two, wasn't it? You were trying to move your things in and live here without Susan's consent. Don't act like we did something wrong. We told Mom about it. She just forgot and panicked on her own. That's not our fault, Emily protested. Such childish excuses don't work in the adult world. Not only did you move in without permission, but you also threw my belongings outside, telling me to leave quickly, the lawyer replied sternly. I never said that. You're the one lying. I can't believe my own mother would make up such accusations. If you keep this up, I'll sue you. Do you want that? Being sued by your own daughter is the last thing you want, right? So take back what you said. Emily threatened, her voice filled with anger. The lawyer remained composed and pulled out his phone. We can't retract the truth. Multiple witnesses saw and heard you telling Susan to leave. We've even recorded their testimonies. He played a video with statements from movers and neighbors. Everyone's stories match. They all say you two told Susan to leave. You could have paid them to say that. How can we trust this? Stop making a fool of us, Ali accused, but the lawyer ignored him. Instead, he produced a key. Emily, you took the key from Susan and threw it away, which was witnessed by many. I found this key exactly where it was described to be. Changing the locks means Susan can't enter or live here, breaking the condition that she can stay as long as she's healthy. So, you violated the terms of the inheritance. Don't spout whatever you want. If I get serious, I can ensure a lawyer like you never works again. Despite Ali's loud threats, the lawyer remained calm and continued. Therefore, this house will never belong to Emily, and you have no right to live here. Now please remove your belongings and return Susan's immediately. If you delay or try to stay, we'll report a breaking and entering crime to the police. You have 2 hours. Begin now. The lawyer clapped his hands sharply and checked the time on his wristwatch. Police, you say? Such nonsense won't intimidate me, Ali blustered, but the lawyer countered, I'm a professional. This is not a lie. Getting in trouble with the police over this would only cause more problems for you. Even Oli seemed to understand that this wasn't an empty threat. Oh no! Oli and Emily began sweating profusely and quickly got up to start moving their things. It seemed Ole was more bark than bite, like a big guy with no courage. I'm sorry. We'll put everything back right away, so please don't call the police, okay? Please? Emily pleaded sweetly with the lawyer and yelled at the movers outside to reload the truck. But they refused, saying there was no such agreement. In the end, Ollie had to rent a car and somehow managed to load their belongings. Just loading isn't enough. You must put everything back the way it was. If Susan's belongings are damaged or dirty, clean them up. Any damage, and we'll report property damage and seek compensation, the lawyer reiterated, pushing Oli and Emily to restore everything within 2 hours after loading their belongings. After loading their belongings, Emily tearfully asked Oli, now that we've packed up, what do we do? How should I know? It's because of your dad's strange will, Emily sharply retorted, blaming Oli for not paying attention to the will properly. Despite their argument, they drove off, leaving the scene. I thanked the lawyer profusely and returned to my home filled with memories of my husband, feeling relieved. Later, I heard that Oli and Emily had caused trouble in their previous town and moved to our house, almost like a secret escape. They had targeted me for inheritance money, but now they were gone. Emily, staying with Ole, seemed destined for a life of repeating mistakes. It pained me, but it was the path Emily chose. If they ever regretted their actions and wanted to live honorably, I'd be willing to help. My husband had mentioned something like this. For now, I'll enjoy my time in our shared house, perhaps even trying skydiving, something my husband had wanted to do. Looking up at the stars in the night sky, I felt my husband encouraging me, and I gently wiped away a tear.